right, so we got a question from a listener,
Cool.
and they asked, will you please explain what is meant by being born again?
Oh, quick.
And I thought this is a really interesting topic for a deep dive because, like, I feel like you hear this phrase, like, all the time,
Oh, yeah.
But, like, what does it actually mean? Like,
Yeah.
Is it like, I don't know, is it just like a feeling?
Right.
Or is it like is it process?
Yeah, is it like a one-time thing?
Yeah.
You can just get zapped and then you're born again.
Yeah.
It's like, it's interesting.
So let's, like, dive into this a little bit.
Yeah, let's break it down.
And, like, try to figure out, like, what is it, like, what's the, what does it mean to be born again?
Well, to, like, really, like, nail this down, I think we should look at, like, what the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
That's like where the phrase comes from.
Yeah, and, like, it uses that phrase born again in a couple of different places.
Oh, right.
And it kind of hints at this idea of, like, a pretty radical transformation.
Oh, for sure.
Like in 1 Corinthians, it talks about how we were, like, washed, we were sanctified, we were justified.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like almost like you're becoming a completely new person.
Right. And, like, I mean, if you think about it, like when a baby's born,
Right.
right? It's like they're entering into like a whole new world.
Yeah.
Like they're leaving this like, confined space of the womb and they're coming into this like, big open world with all these possibilities.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that with being born again.
Right.
You're like entering into this new reality where like you see things differently, you experience life differently.
Yeah.
You're like connected to God in a way that you weren't before.
And it's like in Ephesians, too, it talks about how, like, through Christ, we've been brought near to God.
Yeah.
Like, we were once far off,
Mm,
but now we're, like, brought close.
totally. Yeah. And like in First Peter, it talks about us being like stray sheep.
Right.
Now we've like returned to the shepherd. So
Yeah.
it's like there's this sense of like, coming home,
Yeah.
finding your way back to where you belong.
And, like, even in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 9, it's like talking about receiving salvation as, like, the goal of our faith.
Well,
and
yeah.
it's like, so it ties into this idea of, like,
Totally.
being born again as like a necessary step.
Oh, yeah. It's
Like,
a fundamental shift in
Yeah.
your relationship with God.
So it's clearly, like, more than just, like, an outward change, right? It's not just like, okay, I'm going to start going to church every Sunday,
Right.
or I'm going to, like, stop doing this bad habit.
Exactly. It's not just about like,
Yeah.
changing your behavior. It's
Yeah.
about like a change in your heart,
Right.
like deep down inside.
And it's like, so how would you, like, if you were talking to somebody who was, like,
Okay.
really struggling with this idea,
Yeah.
like, they understand, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I need to, like, be a better person.
Right.
But they're like, but I don't feel any different.
Right.
Like, how would you explain that to them?
Well, it's like this. You can like put on a new coat.
Okay.
Right. You can change your clothes.
Yeah.
But if you're still sitting in a dark room, you're still in the dark. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about just like changing your outward appearance. It's about like a change in your whole being.
Yeah.
Like the light has to come on,
Right. Yeah.
And that's like what being born again is all about.
So it's like an internal illumination
Exactly.
versus just like an external
Yeah.
makeover.
Right. It's not a makeover.
Yeah.
It's like a transformation from
Yeah.
the inside out.
Yeah. And, like, so what about, like, those, like, really intense, like, emotional or spiritual experiences? Like, do you think those are those part of being born again?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think, for some people,
Yeah.
they do have these like really powerful experiences.
Yeah.
Like they might have a dream or a vision, or they might feel like this overwhelming sense of like peace or joy.
Yeah.
And, those things can be like really amazing.
Yeah.
And they can be like part of God's way of like working in our lives.
Yeah.
But I don't think those things are like the defining factor of being born again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about chasing a feeling or like
Right.
trying to have some kind of like mystical experience.
Yeah, like, it's not about, like,
Right.
the fireworks.
Yeah, exactly.
like-
It's about something much deeper than that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say is, like, the most important thing,
Okay.
like, for our listener to, like, really understand
Mhm.
about what it means to be born again?
Well, like John 5.24 talks about like passing from death unto life.
Right.
And I think that's like a really powerful way to describe what it means to be born again.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about like feeling better or being a nicer person.
Yeah.
It's about like a fundamental shift
Right.
in your whole being. Like, you were dead.
Yeah.
And now you're alive.
Spiritually speaking.
Spiritually speaking, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a new way of seeing the world.
Absolutely.
It's a new way of like experiencing life.
Yeah.
It's a new relationship with God.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a new you.
So if you're out there and you're like
Yeah.
kind of like wrestling with this idea
Oh.
of like, what does it mean to be born again?
Mm-hmm.
I would just encourage you to like
Yeah.
think about it in terms of like this transformation.
Yeah.
This like
Yeah.
deep inner change
Yeah.
that happens when you truly like surrender to God.
Yes, and like how does that
Yeah.
play out in your life? Like,
Yeah.
what does it mean to live
Right.
as someone who's been born again?
Yeah, and like what does that
Mhm.
look like practically?
Exactly.
Yeah. So much to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive,
My pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.